Awesome. Yeah. So next up, we have Haici, and she is a PhD student at Indiana University of Bloomington. Are you here with us?
Yeah, I'm here.
Great. Yeah. So go ahead and share your screen whenever you're ready, and I'll keep get your introduction going. But yeah, as I mentioned, she's a PhD student at Indiana University Bloomington, advised by Minji Kim. And she's worked on a wide range of different projects in audio signal processing, like audio coding, source separation, music remixing, and upmixing. So I'm really excited to hear what she's going to discuss about today from some of her recent research. And as you can see, the title of her talk is Unchain Hidden Power, Latent Space Processing for Music Remixing and Upmixing. So I'll pass it over to you.
Cool. Thank you for the introduction, Chris. So today I'm going to talk about some of my previous work, and I gave it the talking name Unchain Hidden Power because I kind of want to stress the takeaways from my talk today, that I want to show that if you're working on some music related problem using deep learning, probably you want to take a look at the latent space, and probably it will give you some unexpected ideas and what you didn't know you know. So I'll start with probably what is latent space. Just a very, very quick introduction. So this is a latent, it's also called latent feature space or embedding space. So suppose we have some data set, then in this latent space or the manifold space, the atoms that are resembling each other are supposed to position more closer, placed closer in this latent space. So by that definition, the data set also will have multiple latent space. It's all about which feature that you want this space to represent and to show. So also there are latent variables in the latent space, and this is as opposed to the observed variables. So when we call it a latent space or latent variables, it's something that is not easy to observe and not easy to refer from the observable data. So from there, I will start with my the first paper is about music remixing, and that's something that I have benefit from doing something in the latent space. So first of all, music upmixing. I know there are so many scenarios about all kind of remixing, but in this paper, we focus on adjusting the levels or the volumes of the music. So suppose we have an input mixture and we have the problem setting that we don't have the original tracks of this mixture. And in that case, you probably want to adjust one volume of one of the sources. Suppose you want to increase the volume of the vocal. So I guess the most straightforward way is to do separation and then remixing. However, there comes with problems. Okay, so firstly, there will be artifacts and there will be interference that comes from the separation. And with the artifact, especially if the separation cases, if the number of the instrument to separate goes up to 3 or 4 or even more instruments, then there are no perfect separation algorithms yet, and it can give you a lot of artifacts. And secondly, you cannot guarantee that the sources you get are clean enough. Suppose you want to increase guitar, but you are actually also increasing other sources. So that also gives you a lot of error. And because of all those problems I just talked about, we have the idea, why not we just put the remixing model and the separation model together? In other words, we want to inform the separation model our intent of doing remixing, and with the hope that the separation can do something to adjust the artifact and the interference accordingly. So this is our model. Firstly, this is our baseline. This is exactly what I described as the most straightforward way of doing remixing. So we have a separation model, which we use ComTestNet. So ComTestNet is famous for doing separation in the latent space. And then we have a ComTestNet to do the separation. And then we remix all the sources together based on how like the remixing ratios that are provided by the users, like as desired remixing. And we have model 1 and model 2. So those are all our kind of our design of this problem. And from baseline to model 2, we are progressing from totally two independent, so like two totally independent separation model and remixing model, and until the model 2, we're kind of combine them more tightly together. So here, the model 1, it has the similar architecture as baseline, except that we are training this model with a joint loss function. So we not only have the separation loss, but we also include this remixing loss. It's kind of like a mixture loss, but it has taken consideration of the remixing ratios. And for the model 2, from here, we are actually really conditioning this ratio, this remixing ratios into the latent space. So we have some conditioning mechanisms that we are inputting this, the remixing weights into the latent space. So note here, both this conditional mechanism and this decoder have some nonlinear layers, and it's a nonlinear transformation. So this whole equation is not commutative. So you cannot say that if we move in the ratios, the weights from here to here, it's the same. It's not the same because it is not commutative. So again, apart from adding this conditioning, we also have this loss function that are doing the remixing and separation. So as you have seen, this is not a difficult idea, but it just working like a charm. So here I have some samples to show. We first have the original mix. I want you, we shouldn't be lonely, we shouldn't have time. I have the target remix, and in my target, I was planning to increase the bass channel of the mixture. I want you, we shouldn't be lonely, we shouldn't have time. I don't know how clear it sounds to you, but the bass channel with the very low bass has been, the volume has been increased by 12 dB in this decibel in this case. And if you are doing the baseline remixing, I want you, we shouldn't be alone. Hear a lot of artifacts. It is not uncommon because the separation model is dealing with force or separation, which is a very hard task to do. I want you, we shouldn't be lonely. And we have our. I want you, we shouldn't be lonely. We shouldn't have time. We have our model 1 and 2. And as I have stated, they work on to reduce the artifact, and at the same time, it's working well on conveying the feeling that we are really increasing the volume of the bass channel. So then I will quickly show our results. We're evaluating this model from 2 aspects. Firstly, does it sound good in terms of the artifact? Does it sound pleasant? And secondly, does it sound correct? And by correct here, I mean how if it is really show as the remixing cases are really wanted to show. So in the first graph here, I'm showing how the remixing performance changes with adjusting one of the volumes. So in this examples here, I'm adjusting the vocal volume from reducing it down by 24 decibel or until increasing it by 24 decibel, and it's the same case here. And here I'm showing the minimal SDR and the loudness difference. So with the green line representing the baseline, you're saying here that the baselines are having lower SDRs, but with more loudness difference, which is not V1 compared to the our proposed model. But I want to point out this interesting point that this is where it is around 0.0, meaning we are actually making very minimal change to the input. However, because baseline is always doing separation, so what it does is always doing separation and then add it up together. So it's actually prefer the cases where the volumes are lower. Probably that's when the artifacts are also low. And a note here, again, I'm showing the case when there are 4 or I guess this is 5. This is with 5 sources. So it's even a more difficult case to do separation. But compared to the baseline, our model, because it's aware of the remixing ratios, so when it's the case that probably you want the minimal changes, it actually learns how to do the minimal changes. And if you're actually don't want any change, it just pass whatever the input is. So I guess with some loss function on the remixing, you are actually obtaining a more healthy curve of the performance. And for this page, I just want to make 2 points. Firstly, the baseline actually doesn't do well in recovering some certain instrument, including piano and vocal in Slug and MuseDB, and bass and guitar. And also, I want to show that, so if you look at the SAR and SIR, I want to show that our model benefits the remixing quality by improving SAR regarding the artifact and SIR regarding the interference simultaneously. So that's how it improves the remixing quality. And so far, I have shown that with the latent space manipulation and how it has kind of upgraded the separation model and how benefits the remixing problem. And now I will quickly show another problem. We found down something in the latent space, and in this case, this latent space disentanglement are actually help this model to do some implicit source separation. So this task is music upmixing. Music upmixing is about producing a music with 5 channel or like more channels with the version with less channels. And traditionally, the upmixing problems, they targeted on separate music content and the ambient sound. So suppose we have the music content and ambient, and then in the home theater cases, you may want to put the ambient sound in the back of your speakers to give you a surrounding sound feeling. So we cannot redefine this problem by saying that I want to sit in the middle and I want a feeling that I'm surrounded by a left band. I may feel that the drum set are coming from the left, and I feel that the vocal are coming from the front right. So with that, if we have the separated track of different instruments, then it's not a difficult problem. We just panning each sources in different locations. However, again, we don't have the channels. And another problem is, what is the correct way of putting those instruments? There's not a golden answer. Ideally, I can put the instrument everywhere I want. So we had this bold idea. So why not we just separate the panning information, which are representative informations that represent how you are perceptually feeling all the instruments are coming from. So we want to disentangle this panning information and the music content. I would say it's a bold idea because we don't even have a definite we don't have a exact definition of what is this panning information. So we have some guess. It might have something to do with the inter-channel level difference or inter-channel time difference, but we don't know. So we just feed it into a deep learning neural network, and we want to see what we can learn, or we want to see if we really can learn something. So we use a VAE model. It's a variational autoencoder. And for those who don't know too much about VAE, it is a generative model in the sense that it tries to maximum the log likelihood of the data set. Also, it has a interpretable latent variables, and the encoder is trying to approximate the posterior distribution of the latent variables. So we have this model. We have the 5-channel input, which is the surrounding sound contains both panning information and the music content into this the encoder of this VAE model. And we are trying to let the latent space only learns the spatial or the panning information. At the same time, we have another input. And this input is a 2-channel stereo, which we suppose doesn't have any panning information, but it contains all the music content that we want. So we combine them together and we put it into a decoder, and we want this decoder to recover whatever the input is. So note here, we have two constraints to make sure that this latent space only learns the panning information. Firstly, we have this input music content. So notice here, because all the music content can be input from here, then this branch, it doesn't have to contain music content. It only needs to provide panning information. And secondly, we're trying to make this latent space very small. So music are a very high dimensional data, and when we make this place really, really, really small, then it's not possible for it to capture all the music data. So with that, I will use two visualization forms to show that we did use latent space to learn the panning information. Firstly, on the first row, the line here are the latent vectors that we learn in the latent space. And you can consider this as a 5x1 vector, but we're putting it down. And in the first case, we are showing two vectors from the same music, but they are panning in different way, and you can see how unrelated they are. But in the case when they are from totally different music, but they are panning the same way, and you see the same trends, how the vectors are going. And another thing, another visualization, we are trying to clustering the whole latent vectors or variables in this whole space. So, when we are trying to clustering them by samples, they are quite chaos, but when clustering by pannings, you see very clear patterns here. And there are also, of course, other numbers to demonstrate the result. And here are also some objective and subjective test numbers that showcase the effectiveness of our style transfer model. But I'm not gonna go too deep into this. And if you are curious about our samples, and because those are 5-channel samples, so it's not possible to showcase here, but you're very welcome to go to our website and to check out the samples. Yeah, so that's all my content. Thank you.
Awesome, thank you so much. That was really awesome, and a lot of content there that you've covered in your work. So it's super cool to see all of that. Yeah, I'll say again, anyone that's following along online, please put your questions in the chat and we'll try to pass them along. I'll also start with a quick question. I'm wondering how far you think you can extend some of these approaches. Like, I think the first idea someone might have is like, oh, can I upmix my stereo music to Dolby Atmos or something, some sort of other like very high, or like, let's say object-based or other high channel count type of system, right? But then that's kind of like an ill-posed problem because you don't actually have all the information. So I'm kind of curious if you think that in your work, if there's a way to kind of facilitate that kind of application potentially.
Yeah, so that's actually, so what the case you are describing is actually the initial motivation for design this architecture, because we're saying that we probably don't have an example, or we don't have any resources to do upmixing. But with this, I probably have, it would be better if I showcase some test examples, but one way of using our model is you probably already have, say, a already upmixed example. And as long as that music have the similar instrumentation setting with the music that you wanted to upmix, then you can use this kind of model to learn how the music are, or the panning information of the existing 5-channel music. And then with the learned panning information, you can combine the panning information with your stereo music and then produce your version of the upmixing. So one way of using our model is to learn whatever panning information from the existing 5-channel music and then apply to some new stereo sounds. I guess one of the motivation behind is, of course, a lot of people want to do upmixing, but not everyone are the expert or the music engineering that knows what is the most correct way. So probably you can just copy whatever the experts have been doing and apply that in your stereo version. So I guess this is one of the possibilities of using this kind of method.
Awesome, thank you. Josh, were there any questions in the chat that you saw?
I saw one question that from Odds that says, is this like phase correlation being read into the latent space, or is it just volume of left and right? I kind of paraphrased what he
I guess it's about how to interpret really interpret this latent space. And I guess this is also something I'm trying to do. So we have the hypothesis that it might have something to do with the interchannel level difference, but the latent, but we still don't know exactly what are really this definition, or I would say if without this model, I cannot produce a latent space just out of my hand and try to use it into the decoder. So I guess I wouldn't say it's all about the levels, but so I would say that's why in the beginning I say it's kind of doing some implicit source separation, because this kind of information kind of encoded the idea of how those different information, like how those different instruments and how they behave between the two speakers, because panning information are all about how every two pair of the speakers and how the energies are coming from one of the speakers, then the other speakers, and that give you the sense of direction. So I guess the panning informations are more about remembering because different instruments usually corresponds to different frequency levels, and it's about how the frequency level difference between each channels. But I guess I also really want to dive deeper into really understanding how what are really those latent variables represent, and how probably with that we can better manipulate those variables and get more advanced applications.
Fantastic. That looks to be all of the questions from the chat. Any other questions from anybody else in the Zoom? Cool. Go ahead, Christian.
Yeah, sounds great. Yeah, thanks so much, Haici, for sharing your work with us. It was super interesting. I think a lot of really relevant applications there that I'd love to see future work on and build on that kind of direction. Yeah, so thanks so much for joining us today.